We're also a nation of immigrants, and we have to create a system that works for all of us. Obama said this about the DREAM Act. How many here know what the DREAM Act is? Okay. How many here have been affected by the DREAM Act? Like know someone that's had it? Okay. The way the DREAM Act works is that it allows permanent legal status to legal immigrants up to the age of 35 who arrived in the United States before the age of 16 and have been living in the country for 5 years or more and have completed 2 years of college. Immigration in our country has always been a controversial subject and has always been an issue. Just in the past couple of decades, our country has experienced a huge illegal immigration problem. Many people do get deported, but unfortunately, the children of the illegal immigrants often do not know that they're illegal until they go and get a license. It's unfair that these children who have lived here all their lives and are basically Americans have to suffer the repercussions of being born in a foreign country and their parents illegally bringing their children to the United States to try and provide them with a better life and giving them a chance at opportunities. President Obama is trying to take care of this problem by passing the DREAM Act, which stands for the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors. It creates a path of legal immigration for undocumented immigrants who have the proper qualifications. I believe that the DREAM Act should be passed today because, and I will be talking about what the DREAM Act is, how it benefits our country and our economy and our education system. The DREAM Act not only benefits immigrants, but also current taxpayers in the United States. Obviously, for the DREAM Act to be successful, it's going to cost money. Students who qualify for the DREAM Act will receive in-state tuition rates, seeing that they have the proper qualifications. Based on analysis of the 2006 to 2008 public use files of the current population survey, there are approximately 2.15 million people who qualify for the DREAM Act. However, from 2009 to 2010, the number has declined 7%. Yes, the cost of the DREAM Act is quite high. It is estimated to be $6.2 billion a year, which breaks down to each taxpayer having to pay about $5,970 per year. However, there's a far larger payoff that overshadows the initial costs. Most undocumented immigrants are forced to work in a cash economy as day laborers, servants, and in factories, which means they do not pay taxes. The DREAM Act would give an incentive for these immigrants to go to school, get an education, because with the education and degrees they'd obtain from schooling, they would be able to get higher paying jobs and would start paying taxes. Over the next 10 years, the DREAM Act would reduce the deficit by $1.4 billion, and this is according to the Congressional Budget Office. They would also be paying for things that the government used to help pay for, like healthcare. They'd be able to contribute to our economy and other ways such as buying homes, starting businesses, opening bank accounts, and investing in their higher education. Also, education is a major part of the DREAM Act. There is a belief that passing this act will always take spots, that they will take spots away from native-born students. However, that is not the case. Taxpayers have been investing in these students since they started elementary school. Since 2001, there have been 10 states that have made it easier for undocumented residents to attend college by providing in-state tuition for those who qualify. Most undocumented immigrants who took advantage of the community college, most undocumented immigrants who take advantage of going to community college do not take spots away because community college has an open enrollment, so there's no cap on how many students can enroll. There are so few who attend four-year universities that it does not affect the opportunity of native-born students. In fact, because there are more people taking advantage of this opportunity, it would cause it to have an increase in school revenues, and then we would get more classes. There's also the argument that it's not so much a problem now, but the more students who start attending these schools, the bigger the problem it will become. With the education system that we have now, community college and state schools are no longer able to fund enough classes for all the students that attend. Budget cuts have forced public higher education to cut hundreds of classes, leaving students to compete for their education and leaving no room for any new students. However, the DREAM Act will help with these budget cuts because the more students who attend public schools, the more tuition the schools are receiving, which then can be put towards funding more classes. The DREAM Act not only helps people who qualify for it, but the schools, teachers, and the students as well. The biggest impact that the DREAM Act will have on the U.S. is the economy. especially the future economy. The DREAM Act would add $329 billion to the economy by 2030. It would grant legal immigration status to 2.1 million young people to go to school for higher education, which will then generate $148 billion in earnings, which leads to increased spending on goods and services, such as houses, cars, computers, etc., leading to another $181 billion in induced economic impact, which will create 1.4 million new jobs and generate $10 billion increase in revenue for the federal government. The percentage of DREAM Act beneficiaries that are in the state determines how much each state will stand to gain. So California has the largest amount of possible dreamers, with the number being at 550,000. So it would have the highest boost in economic activity with $100 billion. Over the next 10 years, the increase in qualified workers would affect the corporate and individual incomes, as well as Social Security, which would increase revenues by $2.3 billion. Obviously, there are negatives to this. Like, it's a very conditional proposal. There are many guidelines to this act, such as age requirement, having to live in the United States for at least 5 years, and having a high school diploma or equivalent. Also, their residency is on a conditional basis because they do have to complete 2 years of post-secondary education or have to have served in the military and maintain good moral behavior before their 6-year gracing period is removed. However, if there were no guidelines and the U.S. would have an overpopulation of immigrants, and obviously funding would increase, which would lead taxpayers having to spend more on immigration. Also, the government needs to make sure that the beneficiaries are serious about being citizens and really want to contribute to the United States as a citizen. The DREAM Act saves taxpayers billions of dollars on deportation of illegal immigrants. The Center for American Progress found that a successful deportation policy would cost about $285 billion within the first 5 years of it in action. It would also cost not just taxpayers, but every man, woman, and child $922 in new taxes with no sort of future payoff. Mass deportation would reduce the national GDP, also known as gross domestic product, by 1.46%, and we would lose $2.6 trillion in our national GDP over the next 10 years, not including the actual cost of deportation. So to deport half of all illegal immigrants that would qualify for the DREAM Act, which is 1.1 million people, it would cost $25.46 billion. Each illegal immigrant would cost $23,148 to be apprehended, detained, and processed for transported. To deport a single illegal immigrant costs 5 times the amount of taxes a taxpayer would initially pay for an individual dreamer to be able to stand in the country and go to school. In fact, all of the money and more would be going back into the economy because tuition and taxes that a single dreamer would be paying once the DREAM Act is in action. Deportation is far more expensive and inefficient than funding for the DREAM Act. There are many illegal immigrants who live in the United States who have lived in the United States their entire life, and it's unfair that they are not provided with the same opportunity that the U.S. citizens are given in the schooling and job market. Their culture is the American culture because this is where they were raised, this is where their friends are, and this is all they know, and that should be reason enough to be granted citizenship. Unfortunately, that is not the way the government works, but there is a chance that they could be given the opportunity, and it should not be taken away from them because not only does it benefit them, but it benefits our economy and our schools. There are many long-term benefits to the DREAM Act, and that will help everyone.
So Jenna, what did you think?
I think the quote and the question in the beginning was a good attention device, and then she defined the DREAM Act really well in the beginning. The preview was good, she outlined it well. she had lots of statistics and facts, and then you were supposed to, you were citing at the beginning, but like, I don't know if you're using the same source, but it like got lost. There was lots of numbers being thrown around, but I was reading and stuff, but overall you did really well.
Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of numbers, and I do think that you need to provide a source citation on some of them. Some of the premises that the numbers are based on need to be explained a little bit more. I thought, for instance, in the last section that it was a little problematic because there is this information. You did cite the one group, the Center for American Progress, I think it was, but all of that information was talking about mass deportations, which is kind of a straw man argument. Nobody's talking about doing that. They're doing that as a way of contrasting the benefits of the DREAM Act, and I thought that was a little bit artificial. I like the argument instead about what the potential benefits would be and why we believe these would be the benefits and where that information comes from. I think that would be a little bit more convincing. There are, you basically are defending a policy argument. That's pretty clear. During the course of the speech, it's relatively easy to follow, although I didn't hear a very clear structure being set up. At the end of the speech, I thought you had a good summary that reminded us of the points that you were trying to make. A couple of times the issue of fairness comes up, and whenever you make a value claim, there ought to be some explanation about what that value is based on. So what is fair in this particular situation? And you kind of take it as a given that it's unfair. It certainly isn't the responsibility of the kid who's been brought up here and didn't even know that they weren't illegal. I can see that seems like they since they're not responsible. If they're not responsible, then it would be unfair to impose something on them. Okay, that's a good explanation. The comparative argument that people sometimes make, of course, is for instance, in-state tuition, students in-state pay less than people out of states, which means that people who are citizens would pay more than people who are not citizens, and that there's an argument about whether or not that is fair. And so I think you need to establish a criteria. The argument here is that these dreamers, as they are referred to, live in the place that they are going to school, and that's the argument I think that you want to make there to make that work. Let's see. Well, there was something else, but it's not jumping out. Oh, let's talk about the delivery issues. I think you'll probably recognize some of these problems. There's way more reading than you want to have going on. It sounds like you're reading, and as a consequence, it sounds dry sometimes. Your eye contact is very limited, and you got those big pages in your hands, which limits your ability to connect with the audience visually. So all of those things, I think, are problematic. All right. Thank you.